Welcome to Xinyuzhng.
My name is Michael Lin, and professionally, I'm about medical scientist. It's been in 30-some years at the National Institutes of Health, from where I retired a couple of years ago. And since I have to make a living, so that's my professional career. And more relevant to today's conversation probably is my community involvement. I have been working with OCA, which is Organization Chinese American, and we are actually celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. And I serve in several leadership capacity over the years, including 4 years as a national president,
Nice to meet you.
a couple of years as
Chairman,
a
right?
executive director and so forth.
Okay.
And that's how I actually got involved into the major topic we're going to talk about, the 1882 project.
Okay, I will talk. Helen, you please.
Hi, Xinyu. Very nice to meet you. Thanks
too.
for inviting us. My name is Helen. I represent CCCAA.
What's the
It's called a Coordination Council of Chinese American Associations. Prior to that I was a founder of Yellow River Art Ensemble, and those are the very fun thing to do in my life. I think I gain a lot from that services.
Great to meet you. Okay, Ted.
And my name is Ted Gong, and I am a retired Foreign Service officer. Much of my career was spent working in China. But I also represent the Chinese American Citizens Alliance, president of the local chapter here. The Chinese Citizens Alliance, Chinese American Citizens Alliance, is one of the oldest organizations in the United States. It was originally formed in 1895, and it's been a continuous organization up to today. One of the things that got me involved with these great people here is our common interest in the 1882 project, and we'll talk about that later. And Michael and I and Helen, we've all been involved from the very beginning of promoting this this effort to recognize some of Chinese American history and its significance.
So welcome to you.
Come to think of it, I've been in the United States for just over 50 years. Hard to believe, but time flies.
You were like 2 years older than me.
But anyway, like all student, new immigrants, when I first came, studying, making a living, establish a professional career is all I cared about. And gradually realized that if I want to stay here, make it my home, I like to be a part of the community, not just in a very small group of Chinese Americans. And that's where I begin to get involved in the community. And again, it's a lesson that I like to share with, because we continue to have a major influx of Chinese immigrants. And they all will experience the same. And trying to decide exactly to what extent you are Chinese or you are Americans. And they are not mutually exclusive. You can keep your Chinese Asian heritage and yet be a proud Americans. And we can talk about that more later.
Okay.
Yeah, I came to United States in 1988, so it's a bit over 20 years already. First came here just kind of to learn Chinese, learn English, and visit with kids. And I feel like we need some, Chinese culture when I was in China, the culture heritage. So then we have a group of, friends get together to start singing Chinese songs, and later we thought, well, we can perform.
Are you good at it? Are you good at it? I just want to.
I like singing.
Okay.
Yeah. So then a group of you know, early, like young generation or new immigrants came together, you know, who loves songs and musics. We created or founded Yellow River Art Ensemble, and we start to perform then, you know, 2 times, twice a year, like that. And then, you know, we received very much from the community, and then they, you know, they all think that's a great thing to do, and especially in the Chinese holidays. And from there, I think this is 20 years of Yellow River.
Wow.
So
What
we're
a
going to
wonderful-
celebrate.
What a wonderful work.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, how about you? How did you start it?
So I'm come at this at a very different angle from Helen and Michael and yourself. I'm 3rd generation Chinese American, so my
Right.
great-grandfather and my grandfather came to the United States first. So I was raised in California, and also very much a product of the 60s and the civil rights era and so forth like this. And of course, those were the days, and I don't know if you recall because you're too young, and you're probably too young, but Michael probably recalls.
Well, those are radical.
It's exclusive us. No.
So we were all in the student civil rights movement. That was the time of Vietnam and awareness, and you have Black awareness and Chicano movements, and among that was also Asian American movement. So we're trying to begin to establish ethnic studies programs, which is something very, very new. Now you take it for granted that there is an ethnic studies program, but in those days, it wasn't something to be taken granted. And so that that got me all involved in this idea of these things. How do you be an American and still be an ethnic American? How do you make those distinctions between the difference between Black power or Chicano power or yellow power? And so some of the questions, Chinese, American, American, Chinese, I can remember the arguments saying, should you put the Chinese in the front or the American in the front, American, Chinese, Chinese, American, and that kind of stuff like that? All those kind of issues both have an intellectual impact as well as a practical consequence. So I've always been, I think, from the beginning involved in those things from student days. And of course, one makes a living and one gets older, and I joined the Foreign Service and got a career, and then afterwards get involved in certain things like Chinese American literature or Asian American literature. Those things always stay. At a certain point you retire, and then you begin to think about those things again that you once did. And so that gives you time to begin to mix again in those issues. And that's how, in many ways, all of us eventually got together and so forth.
That's what the community activity involvement is all about. When there's good enough reason, and you will be able to draw everybody because they suddenly recognize the significance of that. And I particularly like to work with Helen is because, again, going back to the continuous major influx of new immigrants. Who is my connection to that population? Because I've been here for so long, so lost contact with the new immigrants. She's my conduit. And
Good job.
so when you need a lot of people attend an event, you go to her.
You are very powerful
Very,
too.
very
Now I
talented
know.
and really very, very faithful friends. That is no personal agenda, and just work together with the best interests of the community in mind. Now, in life, every so often you will run into somebody because of a common cause and so forth. And this time, because of the 1882 project. And I had the pleasure to work with Ted. And frankly, if it were not because of Ted, this would not have happened. He knows the history of Chinese immigration because actually he's the immigration officer, perhaps that's the right term.
Oh, you send a visa for people
Right,
to not do something wrong. Otherwise, I know very strict.
So actually
U.S. law is very
Good
strict.
guy.
I believe so.
I don't know how many people he turned down, but
Right.
you know, he always has his heart in the right place.
Oh, I
And
believe
representing the Chinese American Citizen Alliance also is a very significant capacity to be involved in this, because as he mentioned that that's the oldest Chinese American organization in the country, and when it was established, it was during the time that Chinese was excluded by law, and then there has to be an organization to come out to speak.
Yeah, let
help.
our voice heard.
Right. And then so I had the pleasure of working with him closely during the last 3 years. Yeah, it's about 3 years now, and it has been a really enjoyment. So he has my highest respect.
It's been a great ride, getting together with you and Michael. We traveled quite a bit around the United States, trying to share ideas about the 1882 project. But it's interesting about the 1882 project in terms of sort of like getting together the people. I just give a little bit of structure of the organization that produced this resolution, congressional resolution. So the 1882 project was able to get Congress to express regrets in 2 unanimous resolutions about the Chinese exclusion laws, which were first significantly passed in 1882. But what is interesting is that the steering committee, and this is how I get together with Michael, is made up of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance. It's made up of the National Council of Chinese Americans. It's made up of the OCA, which Michael was former president, brought tremendous resources and great fun to travel with. Committee 100 and the Japanese American Citizens Alliance. And there was the pro bono support of Covington and Burling, a law firm. But within the 5 organizations, if you know about these organizations, very, very different culture, very, very different history. Culture in the sense of corporate culture. So if you talk about the CACA, my group, we're talking about 4th or 5th generation, maybe 6th or 7th generation that are speaking Cantonese. They originally spoke Toisanese, not even current Cantonese. And many of the people can't speak that language very well today. You talk about OCA, probably even less of the language ability anymore, but more of another political perspective than the Alliance. The Alliance tends to be West Coast, Southwest United States. And the OCA, I have a sense, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, the strength is in the urban areas in the north and also across the United States as well. Committee 100, made up of people, very prominent people that are looking at bilateral U.S.-China affairs. And then you have this other group, which is the Chinese American, National Council of Chinese American, mostly Mandarin-speaking people. So if you can bring together Cantonese people that barely speak Toisanese, right? And you could bring together Mandarin people that came as late as maybe after Tiananmen. There is, in a common purpose, in a national purpose, in a national drive, that was able to pass 2 congressional resolutions within a matter of several months. That is quite remarkable. That's quite a remarkable alliance that shows how we can all get together and we could do something very significant if we set our mind to do it.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. Okay, so I see that each language represents different cultures. That's what I feel. I teach Chinese. Before I teach Chinese, I don't know that's even the local language dialect. It's very important. So sometimes we love the accents. Actually not. Each language or the dialect and accents represent a different culture, different community. Each community have common sense. I mean, I really like your point. They bring different language organization together. We can do something more.
Exclusion laws were passed just about exactly 130 years, 31 years ago. And that has always been a major burden on our community. And during the Second World War, in 1943, there's a presidential executive order to repeal that. said that they are no longer effective and so forth. But that was done purely because during the Second World War, U.S. and China are allies. And it's very embarrassing to the United States government with an ally you are excluding.
Yeah, I
So
know Japan
for that
talk about
convenience,
that.
right,
Why
right.
are you islands, but you exclude it?
Yeah. When they repeal that, there's no expression of regret, recognize the injustice of that. So the community continued to feel that something need to be done. And what prompted perhaps is the California state resolution that among the first to recognize that how injustice, how much, injustice laws there were. And then when that passed in 2009, many of us suddenly realized, well, we should do it again. And actually, CACA took the lead and get all the community together, visit members of Congress and so forth. And that's when Congresswoman Judy Chu.
Yeah, please bring the pictures.
Yeah.
Miss Julie Chu. We're going to talk about
Say yes,
her.
she will take the lead to draft it.
She is from California.
California, that's correct. And she was newly elected within the first year. It was very courageous of her to, but she came from California. She fully aware of what it meant to the our community and so forth.
She had a story about like a last generation has kind of story involving the exclusion.
A lot of people
law.
personally impacted that.
Okay.
And that's when these 5 organizations come together. And I happen to be the member of 3 of the organizations, so I feel very strong affinity to this group, and said that we really need to work seamlessly and with the community and so forth in order to have it passed. And it wasn't easy, but somehow the message is there. When we talked about injustice, talked about protecting our rights, people recognize that. Yeah, it's not just for Chinese exclusion, but it's a much bigger issues. That is respect for our fundamental rights, protect our rights. And they are guaranteed in the Constitution. Yeah. So,
Right.
Ted, could we elaborate
Are
that?
we going to law is very short, actually, compared to the 800-page things that we produce now. But basically, two things that are very important. It said Chinese could not immigrate to the United States. They could not come to the United States because they were Chinese, except for a small group. There was an exceptions, students, diplomats, and merchants. There was a small group of exceptions. But everybody else, if you are Chinese, you cannot come to the United States. The other section is even more important than that, is that Chinese could not become American citizens. Nothing about documents or anything that we think about when we're talking about visas and so forth. If you're a Chinese, you cannot immigrate, you cannot come to the United States, and you cannot become an American citizen. That was the Chinese exclusion laws. Now, each year, one thing to note is that there were a few laws before the 1882, and there were a series of laws afterwards that reinforced these 2 exclusion provisions. And it was not until 1943, as Michael says, that they were rescinded. And even then, they were only rescinded because of political military reasons. There was never any expression of regret, never any acknowledgement of the injustice those laws caused. And if we could go, sometimes when we go into these lectures, we go into each of the laws, and it's quite revealing when you say there's an 1882 exclusion law. But if you go through each of the laws, 1882, 1884, 1886, 1892, 1904, 1902, 1904, when they were made permanent, and you go through the congressional debates, if you go through the legislative history, it is amazing what was actually said in that Congress. So I do want to promote one thing. There is there is a book, we call it The Forbidden Citizens,
Okay.
in which it actually documents the legislation or the history and the debates that went on in each of those different laws. And I would recommend it to you. It goes into much detail and verbatim of what was actually said. And just reading about what was being considered, the words that were being used, the way Chinese were being characterized, and then the analysis of the significance of the debates, I think is very worthwhile to look at. I'll warn you, it's not the easiest read, but it is very revealing.
Okay.
And it just also for your information, after both resolutions are passed, we put together a summary, basically, say what transpired through this effort and so forth. So if anyone is interested, yeah, they're available. And then they actually recorded year that a major exclusion law was passed, starting from 80 to 82. The last one was, I think, 1904.
1904, and then
right,
on 1943, the rescind.
Right,
rescinding
rescind,
of it.
and then and another thing is that the goal of this project is to make sure Congress issue resolution, acknowledge injustice,
Yeah.
express regret, and reaffirm their commitment to protect our rights. This right should not ever been taken away again from anyone. Okay? And we were able to achieve that. And I just want to take a look of the congressional resolution that was published in Congressional Record. Congressional Record is the book that Congress put out to record all the proceedings that happened in Congress. And this is the resolution. This particular one is the Senate resolution recorded in that book. And of course, it's equally important is to make sure our community and the public are aware of what happened and the meaning, the significance of this resolution. And then Ted is really spearheading that effort, trying to make sure that we continue to educate ourselves, because frankly, a lot of our own community were not aware of it, even now.
So we had two objectives when we started the 1882 project. One was to get Congress to address the exclusion laws, very much a political advocacy process that we talked about. Very, very interesting in and of itself. How do you mobilize a national movement to get Congress to do what they did? Congress has only done this 4 times in entire history, to apologize or to address some wrong that a previous Congress did. So it's quite amazing what has happened. But the second objective is very much the heart of what the 1882 project is about. It's the education, the continuing education. And what I'd like to do is how do we sustain that education? If you get the resolutions passed in last year as we did, then do you then let it be forgotten again? And the answer is, of course not. And what we'd like to do is establish a permanent foundation that promotes activities that continuously talks about the exclusion laws, and not just the exclusion laws, but the economic and social impact and political background to the exclusion laws. So that very much is Chinese American history or Asian American history. And more than that, we want to talk about the significance of these laws. It is not enough to say that there was a people in the past that were harmed. I mean, any new immigrant group, whether you're Irish or Catholics or coming in, have always suffered under some kind of
hardship.
law. So what makes the Chinese a little bit different? Well, not really. The same thing applies to these people as did to the Chinese, that American civil rights were being violated. And if we want to maintain the type of country that brought you over and brought me over and that makes me want to be proud of being American, it is those fundamental principles and embodied in the Constitution, but also in the founding principles of people being equal and have an opportunity to the right to pursuit of happiness, etc. But those things shouldn't be just sort of words in the past, they should be lived. And what happens is that Congress's apology or addressing these things, or the president addressing it, or something that brings that history back. That's true. and if right's are wrong, that's absolutely correct. But what is more important about this is that we have a Congress and we have a president that can look itself and look at what it did and say, you know, we were wrong in those things, and so therefore we're going to reaffirm those principles that created the United States in the first place. That is something that is forward-looking. That's not a past-looking thing. It is something for all Americans. If I can say we did it wrong for the Chinese, I did it wrong for the Irish Catholics or whatever we did at one time, but we admit that we did it wrong, and at this moment at least, we reaffirm those principles that created the United States in the first place. That gives us hope for our children. It reaffirms the fact that, say, my father or grandfathers or all the people that came over here, they made the right decision to stay in the United States or to come in the United States, despite the existence of these terrible laws. That says something about America. And that's something that we would like to promote as the significance of learning about these Chinese exclusion laws.
Wow, I know you contribute a lot working with Congresswoman Judy Chu. Then you passed 2 resolutions in Congress and the Senate. Also, we put the hope in the future for our kids, maybe in the textbook, and then educate them. So we have a lot. For example, like Arizona law, kind of similar idea, ask people bring the ID with them, document. So, but Supreme Court involved in maybe adjust, maybe object, maybe against that. But we still put the hope in the future.